morning, guys. I thought I set a meeting early this morning about an hour ago, but I think I put it in the wrong place. So about the last minute scheduling of today's meeting. Happy Hump Day, happy Wednesday. Today's May 20th, 2020. And see all of you are coming in. Jessica, Chris, Mariana, Daniela, Claudia. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, I want to go jump right into today's activity so that we can have some time to do a couple things today. First is I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and what I'd like to do is to take a look at some of the questions that you guys included in your wikis for your second interview. And I want to review today first the structure again of some of these questions. So today we're going to work in the virtual classroom, and let me share my screen and I'll show you where to go. All right, so let's go to our class, and if we go to grammar and context, our virtual classroom, week 13. Sorry about that. Two videos going on. Do week 13, and you scroll down under activities. We're trying today to participate in this chat in the virtual classroom. This may be the first time you've used it, or maybe you've used it. If you select this link, it should take you to, and it says here, click here in the chat. Sorry about that. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to close my. Let's try this again. Okay, bear with me. Computer's acting a little slow this morning. Okay, so let's go to week 15. If you scroll underneath activities, you'll see a chat in virtual classroom. Today, this is where we're going to do some of the activities for reviewing the questions that we went yesterday. All right, so you should to enter into the chat, and depending if you're on a computer or your phone, once you get into the chat, just say hello so I know that you have into the chat. I'll give you guys a minute to get into the chat. Okay, I see Fernanda has made it, Daniela or Mariana has made it.
What is
Daniela.
the chat, Ben? Because I
It's
can hear
under
very
activities,
well.
under week 13.
Okay.
Let me minimize here to go back. If you go under week 13, scroll down under activities. It says direct questions, feedback. Check out this little bubble icon to the left of text. There. Okay. If you click on that, and then if you click on this, then there'll be another option to select here. It says here to enter the chat now. And that should take you to this. If anybody else has problems finding it, let me know. Great. Looks like we got all of us in here, looks like. I think. Almost all of us. All right. Okay, so what I'd like to do, guys, today is and here's what I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, but I want all of us to be looking in and working within this chat. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen, stop sharing. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some examples of some questions, some direct questions. And what I would like for us to do is to find a way to maybe improve the grammar. Okay. How would you rewrite some of these direct questions? Okay. Maybe some of the changes might be very small. Maybe it's just a missing word. Maybe you would rewrite it totally in a different way. Maybe the word order is different. You would, organize the words in a different way. But how would you rewrite the example sentences that I want to share with you? All right. So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to post a question, and then I'll give you guys a few minutes to rewrite it, and then I'll do a countdown so that we all submit our suggestions all at the same time. Okay, so let's go. All right, so I'm going to post the question. Here's the first question. This is a direct question, and here we go. All right, so if I just posted the question, it's at the very bottom of your screen. If you're on a computer, I would try to open up the chat to take up your whole screen just so that you have a little bit more screen real estate. All right, so here's the example. How would you rewrite this direct question? Today, we're just focusing on direct questions. I'll give you a second here. All right, so we'll do a countdown. 3, 2, 1. How would you rewrite this direct question? Once you've completed your version of this direct question, go ahead and post it to the chat. Okay, we have some responses. Most of you have answered similarly. How can the Mexican government help the like that answer? How can? So notice we have a question word plus a modal or an auxiliary verb can. Then we have the Mexican government, which is our subject, and then support. Think of it like this. If you're writing this out as a declarative sentence, you would write it, the Mexican government can support the population. All right, so be very careful with the placement of the auxiliary verb coming before the subject. So we have a question word, auxiliary verb, and then a subject. Good. How can, so yeah, again, I like this option the best. How can the Mexican government help? So again, we have, and I'll type this into the chat. The formula that I tend to follow looks something like this. Question word plus auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb or the lexical verb. Okay, this is the formula typically for content questions, not yes or no questions, but content questions where we have a content word that begins the question. Remember, in this exercise, we wanted to try to avoid yes or no questions. So these are all examples of direct questions that happen to be open content questions. Good. All right, let's take a look at another example. Again, take a look at this example, see how you would reword it. How would you ask this same question? Here we go. I'll give you a minute or two, and then we'll count down. Notice in this example, it's a little bit different. The structure of the sentence, specifically the verb, is a little bit different. So pay close attention to that. Give you just a couple more seconds. All right, 3, 2, 1. Post your response. How would you reword this direct question? Why are Mexican people not afraid of COVID-19? Daniela's response, I like this. I like this option. Why? Okay, why aren't Mexican people afraid? This is also fine. The use of a contraction. Why aren't Mexican people afraid of COVID? You have two. I like these two options. I like this one. Why aren't Mexican people afraid of COVID-19? Fernanda's option and Daniela's option. Why are Mexican COVID-19? They're both correct. So again, notice the placement of the words. In this case, we have a question word. This into the chat. We have a question word plus, in this case, the verb to be. What's the difference between this example, this direct question, and the prior direct question? So we have the question word plus the main verb, then the subject. Notice the difference here. If I were to declarative sentence, how would I do it? How would you write this statement or change it from a question, a direct question, to a declarative statement? And in this case, you wouldn't use why. So don't use why. How would you change the order of the words from this direct question? Ideas? If you have an idea, go ahead and post into the chat. If you have a suggestion, how would you make this a statement? And don't use the word why. Mexican people are not afraid of COVID-19. Right, exactly. Mexican people are not afraid because, right? You could add more information. Right? So notice the difference here. What's the verb in this direct question, or what's the verb in the statements that Fernanda and Danielle shared? What's the verb? Verb or verb phrase, I should say. What's the verb of the sentence? Go ahead and hit enter if you know what the verb is. What do you guys think? What's the verb of this question or the statement? It's basically the same answer for both. Oh, I see. Sorry, my mistake. You guys were posting and my screen doesn't scroll down, so I'm like, okay, nobody's responding, nobody's responding, nobody's responding. Okay, you did respond. Verb is technically the verb is are. You could say that not is part of the verb phrase. It's actually an adverb, right? But the verb is are. Okay, and be afraid is actually what part of speech? Afraid. What part of speech is afraid? What do you guys think? What part of speech is the word afraid? If, right? So afraid is not a part of the verb phrase. Okay, so again, if you scroll back up where I have the formula, question word, right? In this case, why? The main verb, the verb to be, technically the are, and then the subject. Now, the adverb, we saw two different ways of placing the adverb. If it's in a contraction, it can be before the subject, but the adverb not can also be after the subject. All right, very good. Let's look at another example. Here we go. So I'm going to post this. Okay, I've posted it. Again, don't make the mistake I made. You may have to scroll down, move the slider bar all the way down to the bottom of the screen. I've posted the next example. I'll give you a minute or two, and then I'll give you a countdown. How would you write this direct question? All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Post your responses. How would you rewrite this question? All right, so I see some. How is COVID 19 spread? All right. How is the COVID spread? How can the COVID 19 spread? That's also another option. Right. So I like Chris's option. I like Daniela's or Mariana's and Jessica's and Daniela's option there. In this case, I would not use the article the. All right. So you could say, how is COVID spread? There's another option. Any other can think of that would be acceptable for this? Okay, so some of you are saying, how can it spread? How can COVID spread? Right? How is any other option? How about this one? How does COVID 19 spread? In fact, I think how does would be the most, I hear that the most frequent, the verb does. But then, of course, the answer would be it spreads this way. How does it spread? How do you do this? Well, you do it like this. How does it spread? Okay, so in this case, you could also use the verb do, right? The auxiliary, right? How does spread? Okay, so here you would use the auxiliary do. The verb phrase is does spread, right? The answer would be something like COVID spreads, etc. All right, so again, be careful with the word order. The verb is coming before, whether it's an auxiliary or the main verb, it's coming before the subject. Next example. Okay, I've posted now the next example. Scroll down to the bottom. Should be able to see it. I'll give you a moment. Okay, guys, let me know if the sound, if you're having a hard time hearing. I got a message that some of you are having problems hearing me. So hopefully the sound has corrected itself, but let me know if you're having problems hearing me. All right, let's look at this example. How would you write this direct question? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. How does the government, how does the government is acting? How do governments act? All right, so we have Daniela's version here. How do governments act in order to find a solution to the situation of COVID-19? All right, I like that option. She's using the question word how, and then the auxiliary do, governments, and then act is the verb. How are the governments acting? How are the governments acting in order to find a solution? All right, I think that's also acceptable. I think that's Chris's, if I'm not mistaken. All right, that's a good option. How is the government acting? Right? How do governments act? All right, so I think both are acceptable. We're just using different verb tenses, right? How is the government acting? Present continuous. How do they act? That's present tense. How act, all right, so again, pay close attention to here. I think I would use either how is the government acting or how do governments act or how does the government act, right? How does the Mexican government act or whatever? But I would use either the present continuous or the simple present. But again, make sure that you have a verb right after an auxiliary verb or the main verb right after the question word. All right. How is the government acting? Right. How act. So be careful here. We don't want to write how act the governments. We want to write how do they act or how is the government acting. So we still need that auxiliary in both situations, right? In this example, we still need the auxiliary, whether it's do for the simple present or is, the auxiliary is in the case of the present continuous, right? The government is acting, right? We are studying. We are doing something, okay? The present continuous. All right, let's go to the next one. Now, you guys, I'm going to the next example. If you guys have questions about any of these or you want me to review again something that I'm talking about, just jump right in, unmute your microphone, and make your comments or suggestions or questions. All righty, next example. Scroll down to the bottom of your screen. You should see the next example. I'll give you a moment or two. How would you rewrite this direct question? All right, here we go. I'll count down 3, 2, 1. Post your responses. How can you make sure if you are infected? All right, so I like the first part, Dayanira. How can you make sure if you are affected? Now, focus also on the end of the question. How would you end the question? And this looks like it's going for everybody. How can we know that we are infected? All right, that's fine, Chris. But think about what comes after the word infected. How would you complete the rest of that question? Okay, the first part of both of your questions are fine. How can, see, Danielle, how can you know that you are infected? All right, good. Now, again, how would you finish the question? Because there are two issues here. There are two things to look at. The first part is what you guys are doing correctly. For the most part, is you're beginning with a question word and your word order is fine. Here, Bo, you need to have, Danielle, how you can know, instead of how you can know, what needs to come after the question word. In many cases, for these content questions, what do we have to remember? How would you know? All right, how would you know? So that's fine. Daniela has would as the auxiliary, subject you, and then know as the main verb, right? Some of you are using can as an auxiliary, plus the subject we or you. Those are all acceptable. How you know. Now, what do you need, Claudia, after how? How you know that you have coronavirus. All right, but try your best, guys, when you're rewriting these examples, is to try to use as many of the same words as possible. So in this case, let's try to use can, let's try to use infected, I mean, basically, let's try to use all of the same words as best we can in order to change that, change the question, right? But keep the essence, keep the same idea. Now, how do we end this? So let's look at, so how can, now in this case, I'm saying try to use the same words, but I want to offer an alternative to the auxiliary can in this case. So I'll write out my example, how I would rewrite this. All right, here's how I would rewrite this example. How do you know that you are infected by the coronavirus? I might even say, how do you know if you are infected by the coronavirus? Now, notice a couple of things here. I'm using the auxiliary do. How do you know if this? How do you know if you are infected? Also look at the prepositional phrase by. This is the other aspect of this question that we need to look at. All right, using the preposition by, the prepositional phrase by the coronavirus. Okay, so this is how I would rewrite this sentence. How do you know if you are infected by the coronavirus? Pay close attention to the word order at the beginning. How is a question word. Do is the auxiliary. You is our subject. It's a subject pronoun. Know is our main verb. How do you know if? And then you could say if this. You could also say whether. WHETHER. Not weather as in climate weather, but whether, right? We could use whether as a subordinating conjunction or if. Okay, so this was a little one. This is a little bit different, right? This example. Okay, again, I'm going to go to the next example. You guys stop me if you have questions. Just interrupt and ask away. Next example. Go to the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see the next example. How would you rewrite this direct question? I'll give you a moment, and then we'll count down. How would you rewrite this question, and try to use as many of the same words as possible unless you feel that you need to change a word for grammatical purposes. All right, countdown. 3, 2, 1. How would you rewrite this direct question? All right, how could you stay informed about the coronavirus? All right, how could you stay? All right, that's fine. That's a good option, Daniela. How can you be informed about? All right, Chris, what about at the end? Compare your version to Daniela's version. How can you stay informed about? How can you stay informed about? What is the key issue? What do you think the key grammatical focus is for me for this example? What do you think I'm checking for when I present this example? What grammatical structure do you think? Any ideas? Any ideas? Some of you have included it, some of you haven't. All right. In this example, I'm really checking for the articles. Now, I know sometimes we use articles, sometimes we don't use articles. In this case, about the coronavirus, I would use the article, the definite article, the. All right. So I would say, how can you be informed about the coronavirus? Right. Now, if you mention COVID-19, how can you be informed about COVID-19? I would not use the article. All right. So I would use the, because we're talking specifically, we're using the word virus, what kind of virus? The coronavirus, right? And so that would be, I think, the reasoning to use the article. Whereas COVID-19 is more of an general idea where you would just say COVID-19, right? He was affected with COVID-19. You would not need the article. All right, let's take another look at another example. Take a look. How would you rewrite this direct question? I'll give you a few moments and then we'll count down. Now, in this example, I should say, in this example, think more in terms of the meaning of the question, not so much the grammar. I mean, certainly you can change the grammar, but think about the meaning and how would you rewrite this sentence. You can add words, you can take out words, you can change words, but think about the meaning of the question and how would you rewrite it. Now, when you're thinking about this, probably this came from a yes/no question. Do you think that it's real? And then why? And then maybe we try to convert it. And this is one of the points here, and we're going to look at some additional examples here in a minute of yes/no questions that we want to change. But here we might need different words, all right? So we'll count down, we'll see what kind of responses we get. But feel free to include different words in order to make this question a little bit clearer in terms of exactly what it is the writer is intending or the ending this question. Okay, so count down 3, 2, 1. What do you think? How could you rewrite this? How could you know if it's real? Why? All right, real. All right, what about the word real? Is there another word that you could use? Another word instead of real. Why do you think something is real? This is it sounds like a philosophical question, like how do we know something is real? Why do you think this glass is real? Right? In this case, with the COVID-19, is there another word instead of real that you could use to clarify perhaps a little bit more the message here? Go ahead and respond. If you want to repost again, that's fine. What do you think? Now, I don't think I would change the question. Let's see, how could you know if it's real? Well, you could change the question word. How do you think? But instead of real, what's another word that you could use? And I've actually seen these examples that I'm thinking about in some of your other questions. Why is it true? Any other options instead of true? Okay, another true option. Any other ideas? Here's how I would write it. I would use the word exists. Why do you think it exists? Yep. You guys, you're on it. You read my mind. Why do you think that COVID exists? You could even say, how did COVID-19 begin? If you want to get a little bit more specific, right? This is a little bit different question, right? It's not exactly the same question, right? But I like the word exists instead of true, right? Because it's a little bit more explicit in what you're asking instead of how do you think it's real or why do you think that it's real? Then this question really deals with the evidence that the person is relying on, right? And if this is the question, I would word it differently. What kind of questions, and even though it's a what question, but what kind of evidence do you rely on in order for you to feel that this is, that it exists, right? There are different ways that you can reword it, but I think exist is another good word that you could use instead of true, real. Next, let's look at, I'm going to jump around a little bit here. All right, let's look at the next example. Now, the next example is a little bit different in that it's a two-part question. It begins with a yes/no question and then a why question at the end. So my challenge to you is there a way that you can create one content question, one open content question based on this example? Okay, I've posted it and go to the bottom of your screen. Take a minute, type out your response. All right, so again, change this yes or no question to a content question since we want to try to avoid yes or no questions. Begin with the question word why. How would you ask this question? Again, feel free to add, change any words. Try to capture the essence of the question, right? Try to use as many words as you can from the original version. But if you need to change certain words or add or take away, feel free to do so. I'll give you a minute. All right, your response is 3, 2, 1. What do you think? How would you rewrite this question? All right, why do you agree or don't you agree with the actions against COVID-19? All right, grammatically, no problem there. I think perhaps it's a little bit redundant to say, or don't you agree? I guess it depends on what the person said beforehand, but this is fine. You could say this. Why do you agree or don't you agree with the actions? Why do you agree or disagree? I like that option with the actions against COVID. All right, Mariana, I like that. Why would you agree with the actions against? All right, Chris, that's also acceptable. You could say that. Why would you agree? Grammatically, it's fine. It changes slightly because you're asking almost a hypothetical. Why would you agree with this? It's like they're basically saying, if you say it like this, if you ask, why would you agree with this? You're basically saying you shouldn't agree with it. Why would you agree with that? Are you crazy? Right? It's kind of saying something like that, right? Why would you do such a thing? That's crazy. That's a bad thing. Right? So if that's what you want to transmit, if that's what you're saying in the question, fine. But be careful with would in this case because it almost sounds like you're accusing them or you're disagreeing with them. You're embedding your disagreement in the question. How could you agree? So Danielle, I would take a look at that and look at some of these other examples. And because in this case, the person used why at the end, we want to try to use why as the question word to begin the direct question. Why do you agree or disagree with the actions, right? That's good. Fernanda, why would you agree with the actions? Yeah. Deyanira, why would you agree with, yeah, so it's kind of the same as I mentioned in Chris's example. Why would you agree with the actions against this? And again, if this is your intention, fine. But it's hard to tell if it was the intention from the original. Do you agree with this? It doesn't sound like it from the original yes, no question, and then the why at the end, that there is a disagreement embedded in the question. And this is what I want you to Deyanira and Chris to look at to be able to recognize what that is. Again, think of the example. Why would you not help the old lady cross the street? You should do that. You're saying, no, I disagree with that, with your answer, right? And we don't know the answer. That's the thing, right? I'm assuming this question is being raised because we don't know the answer. All right. So that would be another reason why I think I would avoid would in this case, because it holds that meaning. It kind of means it has that meaning of that you disagree with them. All right, let's I think guys we'll stop there. We've seen several examples. I hope this helps. I want you to pay close attention again to the organization of words, the word order for content questions. Okay, these are open content questions that begin obviously with a question word. And so I want you to go back, look at the examples. If you need to go back to the video from today's class, fine. But look at your own examples again. Take another look at the direct questions. And tomorrow, I'll give you class time to start converting these questions, these direct questions, to indirect questions. But I want you to take another look at all of your questions, review your work. If you haven't completed the wiki, please go ahead and complete it. And if you haven't finished the responses, try to finish those as well. All right. And I think we'll stop there for today. Any questions about direct questions or any questions specifically about some of the examples that we talked about here today? All right.
No
I guess
questions.
then if there are no more questions, we'll stop there for today and we'll pick up tomorrow with this activity. Again, take a look at your questions, review them, make any changes. Even if they weren't exactly the same questions that you asked, go ahead and try to correct those. If you had some issues with word order or just different words that you need to include, feel free to go in and make those changes to your direct questions that you have in your wiki. All right, so we'll stop there, guys. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
Ben. Thank you.
Thank you.